Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Leveraging Operations in Leadership. And today is a really special day for a couple of different reasons, right? The first thing is that I have my first guest on this podcast, so we're doing live.
Yes.
You can see us in video, and for those of you on Apple and Spotify, you can still listen to us. And the second thing is that we're kicking off a series that is really near and dear to my heart. And we're going to be
Mhm.
talking about burnout. So the name of this series is Leaving Burnout Behind because that is so 2025 and we want to do something different and leading in a way that honors your capacity for yourself. We're really going to be sharing some great insights about burnout in general, and we're going to be sharing it from
Mhm.
different perspectives. So, my very first guest, I want to introduce to you, and let me read it and make sure I get it right. My very first
Yes.
guest is Shani Gardner. She's a licensed clinical social worker, and
Mhm.
Shani is she's a psychotherapist, speaker, and burnout recovery and resilience strategist with over a decade of experience supporting the mental health of Black women and women of color. Through her clinical work, speaking, and workshops, she helps individuals and organizations move from survival mode to sustainable well being using practical, trauma informed tools that honor both identity and lived experience. All right, so we
Yes.
want to welcome Miss Shawnee. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk more about this today.
Oh, yes, I am. And Shawnee, I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to dig right in.
Mhm.
Because so just quick preliminary research, we see that burnout has become a major issue, right? More than half of
Yes.
leaders are experiencing it or going to experience it at some time, right? So because this work is, I feel, is so important, I want to talk about what led you to focus on burnout. Why this?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I always knew I wanted to be a therapist. And at first, I really wanted to focus my work on anxiety. I felt like that was an experience that I had and many other people in my life had. So I was like, let me do anxiety. And then when I got deeper into my career, I noticed a pattern between a lot of the Black women and women of color I was working with that it wasn't just anxiety. Like there was this exhaustion that came from it, a lot of like negative thoughts and sort of just it felt deeper than
Mm,
just, some
mm,
anxiety. And when I really dug into it, at first I was like, well, maybe this is perfectionism, right? Like the expectations are too high, and maybe that's what's really driving, some of the concerns that are coming up. And I was like, well, it's not that. Because most people are not complaining about the perfectionism, right? Like it keeps them very motivated and they're executing at a high level, and that is all good. But the
mhm,
problem was actually the results of ongoing anxiety and perfectionism, which for most people was burnout, right? So the way that burnout is different from stress and anxiety, burnout comes with this deep exhaustion. You get really cynical. So, like, your thoughts change, they get a little bit negative, and you're just not able to have the same output that you had been having before. So, with all of that, my years of experience, I'm like, oh, this is much deeper than just anxiety or just stress. And
mm,
so that really inspired me to look a little bit more into this experience of burnout and how it's showing up. So that's on the clinical side. And then on the personal side, I have experienced burnout myself as well. I worked at a job that I was seeing clients, but then I also had administrative tasks that I needed to do as well. And being a therapist, as you can imagine, it's heavy, right? Like I'm hearing all these people's stories and I'm holding so
yeah.
much and supporting people. And so the addition of the administrative tasks was just too much on my plate. And it got to the point where my employer did not care about any of that, right? They're like, hit your numbers, get these KPIs, hit the deadlines. That is all they cared about. And
Right.
so after a long time of, doing this work that was unrelenting, right? Like the stress never went away. I found myself like having a really hard time showing up for clients, getting tasks done. I was like exhausted all weekend and I felt like no rest was able to actually help me.
Yep.
And so unfortunately, it wasn't until I got laid off that I was like, I was burnt out. this whole
Yeah.
time, I was just going, going, going that I never had like an opportunity to really reflect on what was happening until I got laid off and I had time. And I was like, wait a minute, this is more than just I'm stressed or I'm busy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And
Mm-hmm.
I can relate because I've experienced it as well. And that
Mm-hmm.
exhaustion is just a level, like you said, you can rest doesn't do it. Right. So I'm
Right.
sleeping and I still feel tired. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
for me, I just couldn't get enough rest.
Yes.
So initially I thought depression. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm depressed,
Yes.
or whatever, but it's other things that go along with it. So in talking
Absolutely.
about that, right, how do you define burnout? Like how would somebody even know?
Yeah. Great question. I'm glad you bring up like other diagnoses, like maybe it's depression, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And burnout technically is not in the DSM, which is like our big book of diagnoses,
Hmm.
but it is a very true and real experience. So I like to call it a syndrome that is
Okay.
the result of unrelenting, ongoing stress, right? So like at first you're just stressed and you're like, oh, the deadlines. And then if that does not let up, then ultimately you will get to this place of burnout. And so burnout includes this deep exhaustion. It can be mentally, physically, emotionally. Sometimes it could be all three. It also comes with cynicism, which is basically like thinking, what's the point? Or nobody cares, or, like I'm useless, like the value that I don't bring any value to this place, or whatever the case may be. And so
Mm,
there's this disconnect from your values, from your why, from any of the things that once motivated you, that's no longer present. And then you may have like just negative thoughts in general about like yourself, about the work, whatever the case may be. And then ultimately, that deep exhaustion, the cynicism, will then lead to some physical symptoms. So you may be more irritable, you're maybe having sleep issues. For a lot of people, their immune systems weaken, and so they're getting sick more often. And so it's a combination of these like physical, mental, and emotional states
mm,
that ultimately is just like you're shut down,
mm,
essentially. Your body shut
mm.
down, your brain shut down, everything is just on, just disconnected.
And I'm glad you brought up the part about value. Because
Hmm.
I think
Yeah,
that that's a part that a lot of us experience along with everything else. I primarily work with women,
yeah.
and of the women that I work with, most of them are Black women, women of color, right? And
Hmm.
we understand that there's some experiences that may be different for us.
Yeah.
And one of the things that comes up is the value, right?
Hmm.
Feeling like you don't have that level of value. And along with the exhaustion. So usually when I hear it, is I'm tired. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And they're working, right? They're working, but they
Yes.
feel like they're not getting a lot done. And a lot of times they're not getting as much done as they could, right?
Right.
Because you got all of this other stuff that's really like weighing on you. So
Hmm.
when it comes to the people that I work with, they're in leadership, whether they are
Yes.
in a corporate organization or a business owner.
Yes.
And both of those are high stress environments. So what are some of the things that actually contribute to burnout?
Yeah. And when we're thinking about this in the context of women and women of color and Black women specifically, I think the thing that contributes to burnout the most is having these like unrealistically high expectations. And that can be either internally, like you believe that you have to, do the most in order to find and feel value, or it's something that has been like projected onto us. So I'm sure I'm not the only one who got this message, but we have to work 10 times harder just to get half as much, right? And so if you really internalize that message, imagine how much output you're doing. Imagine how the stakes are going to feel so high for everything that you do, right? And
Right.
so when we are constantly chasing this like high expectation that, to be honest, is probably unrealistic, that means that the stress is never going to go away.
Hmm.
Like you're always chasing, you're always going after it, you're always striving, striving, striving. And that is just a recipe for burnout. So either you have that own thought in your brain, or it's been projected onto you by society,
Mm-hmm.
by the
Mm-hmm.
work environment. So it's not made up, right? Like you're probably in places that they're like the deadline is tomorrow and it's an unrealistic deadline. And so having those expectations placed on us, especially as leaders and especially as business owners, a lot of the weight does fall on our backs, but we get no support, no breaks, no room to breathe. And that I think is the biggest contribution to burnout, right? Like you can't pour from an empty cup. And so if you're continuing to pour, pour, pour and never, pouring back into yourself, the cup is going to run dry. That's huge. Yeah.
Ooh, wee. I guess like,
Feel that.
having experienced that and then hearing you talk,
Yes.
um, first of all, I feel like having this conversation is so valuable because sometimes people are experiencing it and don't know what they're experiencing. We just don't know what's going
Absolutely.
on in our heads and in our bodies and things like that.
Hmm.
And sometimes we feel like, and I know when I experienced it, you feel like it's just, and initially I
Yes.
felt like I couldn't handle it. You just can't
Mm.
handle the work. Not that, too much pressure had been applied. You just,
Yes.
so there's this feeling like, am I a failure?
Yes.
Type of thing. So it's this cycle that you end up going through. And I want people to understand that this is real. This is
It
like
is.
it is real. It's not something that is made up. It's not something that only happens to you because there's like many of us that have experienced it and have
Hmm.
been able to come out on the other side. So now that we've kind of talked about what lends itself to us, so I understand what some of the signs are. I got a good
Yes.
understanding of this may be happening. What's the next step? Right? Because
Hmm.
the goal
Yeah.
is to, okay, yeah, this is happening. It may be burnout. Now what?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to just name that there is really no like quick fix or like quick solution to this, because if we think about the origins of how burnout can happen for someone, we're
Hmm.
talking about they may be in a toxic work environment. Maybe they have no boundaries, right? Like they're working day, night, weekends, no periods of rest.
Hmm.
There's so many components that sort of lend itself to you being in this place of burnout. So I just want to name that it's a complex,
Yeah.
complex
Yeah.
thing to have to navigate. But there are four like core things that I think can be really helpful for people to just take the next step to start their burnout recovery journey. Because I will also call it a journey. It takes time. So
Yeah.
I also want to normalize like it is a commitment, and it also requires like change. I have four things. I'll run through them. So the first piece is, which I think is maybe one of the most important pieces, is leaning on your support system. The reason why this is so important is one, like you were mentioning, burnout can feel so isolating. You feel like you're alone, you feel like it's your
Yeah.
fault. And so just being able to have like trusted people in your life to talk to about the situation, vent to, because venting can be helpful. Um, Someone just to take the load off. So, like, let's say you're a parent in a two-parent household and it's your night to cook dinner, but you are exhausted. Maybe ask your partner, I know that today's my day, but can we do takeout or do you mind cooking? And so it is very vulnerable because having supportive connections means that you have to ask for help.
Yes.
And for some of us, that is hard, but I think it's really important to have people to lean on who can take things off of your plate, who can help you problem solve a little bit if that needs to happen, someone who can encourage you and motivate you and validate what you're
Hmm.
going through. So I
Hmm.
think having
Hmm.
supportive people in your life is where I would start, is just sort of figuring out who can support me, who can I talk to about this, and how can I sort of brainstorm where to go. So I think that's the first tip.
Okay.
The second tip is reevaluating the situation and using your values to inform, what direction you want to go in next. So when you're burnt out, A lot of the times you may be thinking like, what's the point? Why am I even here? Like, my work doesn't matter. I'm a failure, all those kinds of things. And those kinds of thoughts really disconnect us from our why, right? Like, what's most important to us. And so having a little check-in with yourself of like, well, why do I work at this job? Or like, why am I running this business? Like, what is my mission
Mm,
and what is most important to me? Now, that doesn't automatically take away the burnout, of course, but it can help you just ground yourself in the reality of you're not doing this for no reason.
right.
You're doing this for a purpose. Now, sometimes when you do this values reflection, you may notice, oh, this job or this business actually no longer aligns with my values
Mm-hmm.
as well. So it
Mm-hmm.
could go both ways. It can either connect you back to the work or it can highlight, like, this is now misaligned. Like, this is just not something that is serving me anymore. And if
Mm-hmm.
that's the case, then maybe it's time to make a different decision,
Right.
recalibrate, make an exit plan if you need to. So really just understanding like what is most important to me and
Mm-hmm.
how can I best get back to that alignment, whether it's staying at this place or maybe leaving or whatever the case may be. Another tip, the third one, is I think intentional reflection is so important because a lot of the times when we're burnt out, we are just going. We are never taking a moment to be like, well, how am I feeling? What am I thinking? What's working? What's not working? Like, we're usually not doing that evaluation. We're just kind of putting one foot in front of the other. And so, having these opportunities for reflection, I think, are really important. The best ways to do this is either therapy, which I think is the perfect support when you're going through burnout, is just having a place once a week where you talk out like what is going on, how you're feeling, and maybe some coping skills that you can use and things of that nature. But therapy is a great place for that reflection. Or if therapy is not necessarily in your, if you're not ready for that or that feels like too big of a commitment, I think journaling is also a really huge asset as well. So in the show notes, make sure you sign up for my burnout reflection journal. It is in there, and that can be like a good first step. But really understanding what is draining me and how did I get here? I think are going to be two huge reflection questions for you to reflect on. Because if you know how you got to burnout, then you can lower the risk in the future, you can make some changes, you can plan ahead. And so, really having an opportunity to just reflect on how did I get here?
Right.
Like, what are the conditions that got me to this particular place? So, journaling and or therapy, I think is a really great step as well. And the last thing I'll say is what I think is what we think about when we think about stress is like any sort of self-care that you need to do. And I think that self-care gets overlooked because it's not just bubble baths and nail
Right.
appointments,
Right.
right? Those are nice, so do those too. But self-care is really about what do I need to do that will pour back into myself? And it's a very thoughtful and intentional process. So for me, I know that moving my body is something that is so helpful if I'm feeling stressed. And so that is something that I prioritize in my week. So I'm going on walks. It is very cold here in New York City. So I am like bundling up as much as possible so that I can go on my walk because I know that my walk is what helps me to calm down if I'm feeling
Right.
stressed. It gives me a little break. So find the things in your life that can pour back into you. Maybe you're a social person, so making sure that you have things on your calendar to look forward to is
Mm-hmm.
self-care. Or maybe you are someone that really likes to meditate, do your meditations, make sure that you schedule that into your day. Or if
Mm-hmm.
you're a spiritual person, make sure that you have your Bible study ready to go, or you're attending your church services. So really just thinking about what are the things that help to calm me down and what are the things that pour back into me that sort of feed into what my needs are. So I just said a lot, but I'll pause there.
So I love all of the tips and the values and the journals, like the reflection. That's something that
Yes.
I advise leaders to do just in general, not even from a burnout
Yes.
perspective. But
Hmm.
it's nice to know that they
Yep.
may find it helpful for that as well.
Absolutely.
Let me say this because most of the people that listen to the podcast are in leadership. What about people that are not in leadership? Because I don't want them to feel left out. Because I know that we have
Yeah.
like a lot of caregivers and
Mhm.
and things like that. And I'm thinking of someone specifically, but sometimes I know that they feel guilty for feeling stressed. So is there like any feedback that you would have for them? Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, and thank you
mm,
for naming the guilt here because, again, if you have this unrealistic expectation that you're not quite meeting, right? Like if you haven't a thought of like what a good mom is, she's packing the lunches every day, she's at every pickup, she's at every game, she's at every like, it is unrealistic for you to show up 100% to everything all the time. Like we are only human.
right.
And so the way that I support someone who may be feeling guilty about not being able to show up to everything 100% is because we are only human, right? You have to be aware of what your capacity is and accepting what your capacity is. So I like to use the analogy of like, we're all cell phones, right? The cell phone only got 100%. You can't charge it more than that. It's a
That's a good one.
finite,
That's a
right? It's
good
a
one.
finite amount of energy. Now
Mm-hmm.
you have to, plug it back in to recharge it, get it back up to that 100, but we only have a finite number in the like hours in the day. We have a
That's
finite
right.
amount of energy, and that is okay. So if you think about your energy as it is really important for me to recharge so that I can show up to the things that I can do more 100%. That
Mm-hmm.
is going to be important. So if you have to choose between packing the lunch or taking a nap, obviously you might feel bad about not packing the lunch, but just know that if you take this nap right now, you know that you are going to be a rock star at dinner time. And maybe that is important, right? So you kind of have to choose your battles a little bit and make sure that there's a balance between you showing up for others and you pouring into yourself as well, right? Like once the battery's at zero, we are useless, right? The
Mm-hmm.
phone is dead. It cannot be used. And so in order for you to actually show up in the ways that you want to and need to, you have to prioritize rest. So your rest is not something to feel guilty about. Your rest is something that is a requirement for you to be the best leader,
Right.
mother, parent, business owner, entrepreneur, all of those things. So
Right.
just a little flip of the order of operations.
Which makes sense. So, what about people that have never gone to therapy? And I want to kind
Ooh,
of go there because I know that it seems like people are becoming more open to it and talking about it
yes.
more, but there are still a segment of people that have either never gone or their thoughts around it are um,
Mhm.
or not that is something that you do. You know what I mean? And I know, and I'm not trying to force people to do therapy, but I do want
Of course.
to talk to those people that have considered it, but may be
Mhm.
hesitant for certain reasons.
Yeah. Ooh, I have a lot of thoughts because this is
Okay,
exciting.
good.
And I'm biased because I am a therapist. So of course I'm gonna, always vouch for therapy. I think that the thing that makes therapy such a wonderful asset and resource is that it is an hour or so once a week that is carved out that is only for you. And that is not something that we typically have access to in our day-to-day life, right? Like
Right.
you're a leader, a mom, a partner, a sister, a mother. Like you have all of these roles where they're always related to someone else, right? Like you have to do something, you have to be something. And to have at this very least this 1 hour where it is all about you, I think in and of itself is a way to just reclaim your time and to reclaim, your care for yourself. So that's like my larger ideas. Like at the very least, this is an hour for you.
I
And
love
at the
that
very
perspective.
most, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the very most, therapy is an incredible way for you to learn coping skills, right? Because these things are not always natural or ingrained. So your therapist might teach you new tools on how to navigate some of these challenges. So it may be like literal coping skills, so like breathing, meditating, all that kind of stuff. And so you can practice those in therapy.
Hmm.
Therapy is also an opportunity for you to just sort of understand how your brain is working, right? Like, because we just sort of live it, we experience our brains. But in therapy, you're really identifying like, well, are there patterns to the thinking that you have? What are the origins of these thoughts and core
Mm,
beliefs? Where did this come from? And having that time where you're like, oh, I thought that this was an automatic thing, but it actually is a result of all of these experiences that kind of got me here. And so that can be really valuable in navigating burnout because you can then be aware of the patterns, maybe some defense mechanisms that you're doing, maybe things that you're avoiding. So it really increases your self-awareness. And I think that any person can benefit from just understanding how their brain and their body works much better. I think that we can
right.
all really learn and grow just from that self-awareness. So I'll pause there.
I
I
love
can
it.
say more, but
I
I'll
love
pause there.
I love it. I love how you started with saying that this is time set aside specifically for you.
Yes,
So for me, that's a part of self-care. This is
absolutely.
where I go to have conversations and get tools, resources, and be refueled, you know what I mean,
Yes.
for the coming week. So I think it's something great to do for yourself. How do people go about finding a therapist? Like, because I feel like there has to be a match. Every
Oh
therapist,
yeah.
it may not be a match.
Oh yeah. I like to say that finding a therapist is kind of like dating. It
Okay.
is a numbers game, and I say that on the front end because I think that a lot of people they like maybe try one therapist, it doesn't work, and then they're off therapy
Right.
forever. And when you are, it's a relationship that you're ultimately looking for, right? It's a very
Hmm.
different and unique relationship, but that is what you're searching for. And so I recommend the first place that I start always with looking for a therapist is Psychology Today. It's a huge
Your role model.
platform.
Yeah.
There are so many therapists on it. You can also filter it out by the race and the gender of the therapist. You can literally look up Black woman therapist. If you're someone who's spiritual, you can also, I think, put in some of your preferences there. And you can
Okay.
also filter it out by price, by insurance. So it gives you like a very, very long list. Then when you get your people, I would say pick like top three
Okay.
because it could get a little bit overwhelming when you're like, I have 10 choices to choose from.
Yeah.
That's a little much. Get your top three and then see if you can do a consultation call. So that's like a 15, 20-minute phone call with the therapist, just so you can understand like what their practice is, how they might be able to help you, and then use that to sort of inform. So I would say like schedule 3 consultations just to get to see people's style. And then you schedule your intake. And that's where you really get to feel out, a particular therapist because
Okay.
that's like a full hour where they're asking you questions and you're sort of sharing your experience. And so this may sound a little woo-woo, but I'm a vibes person. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, me
in
too.
that first, right? Like we gotta gel, like,
Yeah.
the conversation I would like to flow. And from a therapist perspective, like I have felt that like flow in like the first session or two.
Hmm.
And so that to me is like, okay, great, we can continue to work together. And the same goes for the opposite. If you have like an off feeling or, like you just don't gel with a therapist, it is totally okay to switch, right? You can just let them know, like, hey, thank you so much for your time. I've decided to explore other options, right? So don't
Hmm.
also feel like you have to stick with the first therapist you find because
Right.
again, it's like dating, right? And you don't want to settle. You don't want to settle for
That's
anybody. You
right.
want
That's
to
right.
have a good fit. So it is a process.
Hmm.
And it does take a little bit of a commitment to find a good therapist and sort of stick with them. But once you find that good match, it is so worth it. Therapy can really change your life. And so I think it is worth the work on the front end to find that good match.
Right. So you're located in New York, but you work
Yes, I
with people
am.
virtually,
Yes,
right?
so I work with
Okay.
folks virtually, so I can see anyone in the entire state of New York. It doesn't have to be in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And, people, what I like about virtual is that you're able to zoom in from the comfort of your own home. So you get to, have the privacy and the comfort and the space that you need for the sessions. I have clients that come in with their robe and their bonnet on, and I'm like, yes, I love that you are comfy, as you should be in this setting.
Right.
So, I have a come as you are policy, and I think that virtual therapy can really allow for people to curate their own sense of comfort to do this process, which is vulnerable, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
therapy is not an easy breezy walk in the park all of the time. And so just being able to have that flexibility, I think, has been really helpful for my work and for the work with my clients too.
Okay. So, do
Yeah.
you do any work with people outside of New York?
At this point, I do not do any work outside of New York. I am thinking about running a group, which does not have to be state specific, but you have to stay tuned for that.
Oh, okay. Definitely will. And I'm sure it'll be something about burnout.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Okay. So, what other kind of work do you do aside from, excuse me, being a therapist?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. So my primary work is providing one-to-one therapy for individuals. But as we're talking about today, sometimes it's hard to find a good therapist. It's a long process. It can be really vulnerable. And so I also bring all of my burnout work to organizations and corporations. I especially
Okay.
love working with employee resource groups. So I've done work with Black ERGs, with women ERGs, and those are just like groups where people are bonded together by like a shared identity. And so
Hmm.
that allows me to come in and do a workshop either on burnout, self-care, mental health and mental wellness, resilience, leadership, empowerment. So I sort of have a couple of topics that I talk about, and I
Okay.
love to tailor them to the specific population that's present, right? It's because like if I'm doing a workshop for Black people, it might sound different than a workshop for the general population of a job. Which
Right.
I do those too. I do more general workshops as well. But there's something really beautiful about being in a room with folks of shared identity and really having this opportunity to learn together and also to experience together as well. So I love doing
Yeah.
workshops. It has been really aligned with my values to be able to take what I do from a one-to-one and then have it be a one-to-many. So it really allows me to expand my reach, which is very meaningful to me.
Very good.
Yeah.
So, what would be any last minute words of wisdom, advice, or anything for the audience?
Yeah. So I think if you take anything from today's podcast, I want you to just be aware of what your capacity is and
Hmm.
allowing that to sort of dictate your choices. And not always. There's going to be times where we're tired, but we still have to show up. And that is absolutely true. But also just being aware of and noticing, like, okay, I have 12 projects on my plate. I can probably only do 10 of them well. And so being okay with identifying that and then maybe saying no or setting a boundary or saying not right now to these other things. I know that that's hard,
Hmm.
but really understanding your capacity is one, going to help you decrease the risk of burnout, but two, allows for you to conserve your energy for the things that you know that you can execute really well, right? Like we can't if we're divvying up ourselves, like we're going to be spread too thin.
Hmm.
And so maybe have an idea and awareness of what your capacity is so you can put your 100% in a couple buckets instead of all the buckets. So take that with you. I really encourage you to think about this is what I can do in my capacity. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, these other things have to come later, or it's just a no.
That's right. That's right. And I love it because it goes back to, like you said, values and that alignment.
Yes,
And sometimes that'll help you make the decision,
absolutely.
this is a not right now or a flat out no,
Mhm.
or, whatever the case may be, but it can help you with prioritizing what those
Exactly.
things are. I'm so thankful for this conversation. And I
Yes.
thank you for joining us. And I'm hoping and praying that people got something from this. The
Hmm.
journaling resource that you have, I'm going to make sure that link is in the show notes. I'm a journaler, so
Oh, good.
journaling is my number one thing. So hopefully people will download that, and that'll be a way to kind of get the process started. And then also having some of your contact information down there just in case someone wants
Yes,
to reach out to you directly. But again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to
of
really
course.
give us some tips that we could use and that we could use to go forward or to help prevent us from getting to that place. Because ultimately, that's it, right? We would like to help
Right.
prevent people from getting to that place. But if they're right there, it's nice to have some resources to kind of help them through a tough time. Because like I said, I know how tough it is. And I understand
Hmm.
that if you do not have the tools and the resources, it's easier to repeat it again, right? So I have
Absolutely.
gone through burnout more than once. And,
Yep.
after the second time, then I'm like, oh, I started to
Something's got to change.
like, how did I? Because it goes back to that reflection when you look back and say, how did I end up here? And for me, it was like, well, how did I find myself here again? And going back and looking
Yes.
at those things and making the adjustments and not making, I wasn't able to make all adjustments at one time. You know what I
Right, of
mean? So
course.
incrementally making the adjustments, doing what I needed to do, so
Hmm.
that history didn't repeat itself. And each time I learned something, but there was some similarities that I was like, oh, it's the same
Hmm.
thing. It's the same thing, Tanya.
Yep,
um,
absolutely.
so I
Yeah,
really believe that, people having the support and the resources can help them where they're not finding themselves in this cycle. Because that
absolutely.
alone is a whole nother feeling and experience, like, oh,
Yeah.
again, type of thing. So
Yes.
really just thank you so much for sharing all of the information that you've shared and your expertise. And to the audience, if you know somebody, because after listening to
Hmm.
this, you may either self identify or you may see somebody else in your life that you're like, maybe they're experiencing some of these things. This episode could help. Make sure you are sharing it with them because we
Yes.
really want to get the word out. You're not alone. There
No.
are tools, resources, people to help you get through this. You don't have to navigate this space by yourself. You don't.
Hmm.
So share the podcast. All right. So thank you so
Yes.
much again, Shani, and everybody else that is listening. I want you to have a wonderful day.